Florida is the state where the most people and properties will be at risk of severe coastal flooding by the year 2050. That's according to a new analysis that was just released this week. Take a look.
The nonprofit Climate Central found that in just 25 years, a total of 23,000 people and 17,000 homes in Florida will experience annual coastal flooding due to high tides or strong winds whipping water onto land. This includes areas previously unaffected. The study also found that Florida is especially vulnerable, with more homes and people than other at-risk states such as New York, New Jersey, and Louisiana, partly because the long coast lies almost at sea level. It also reflects the state's approach to zoning and planning, with high population density right in the areas most vulnerable to catastrophic damage. The research was released along with a coastal risk finder that allows users to zoom into specific areas and adjust outcomes. Storm surges as high as 10 feet destroyed thousands of homes on the Gulf Coast in the past year. The higher the sea levels, the more potential storm surge. The report, including the Coastal Risk Finder, can be found online at climatecentral.org.
And just within the last 48 hours, the forecasters came out with the predictions for this year's hurricane season. They're predicting 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 of them major. It's not good news. What are some of the things, Catherine, that you expect we should be looking at, seeing in our coverage as you all, the reporters, help our community prepare for what may be ahead this hurricane season?
Yeah, so I mean, hurricane season is what keeps me up at night. I mean, it's just, the price of paradise, right? I think we really got to pay attention to water, and that water is the most dangerous aspect of hurricanes, even though we saw some really high profile damage from wind, like the roof of Tropicana Field and some other damage like that. But, water storm surge killed 12 people in Pinellas County and battered a lot of homes along the coast. But, great point about inland flooding being an issue as well. Rainfall, being so powerful and lasting for so long that it's actually dousing all of the drainage infrastructure that we have in place. So I think everyone needs to be really worried about water and having a plan in place, to get themselves to safety, rather than being stuck in a flooded area. So I mean, and that report I think is really important, and everyone needs to be paying attention to as we're heading into a hurricane season where a lot of places still are rebuilding. I was just at Sunset Beach on Treasure Island last night, which was my favorite beach, my go-to, and I hadn't been to it since right after the storm, and it kind of looked in a lot of ways pretty similar to right after the storm. I mean, a lot of those houses, are still rebuilding. Caddies on the beach, they're operating out of a tent right now because their building got so destroyed. So
what's interesting though is we spent the last century draining Florida. We did, if you look at the history, and we decided maybe it's not a great idea, and it didn't work out so well really either, draining into the Everglades, and so they pulled back. But we still have water management districts because this is such a big issue. It's going to continue to be a big issue. It's Florida. There are more people, as you saw in the flyovers, living on the coast than ever before. But we didn't do that. We live inland. We live on the high ground. If you drive down Bayshore, notice the homes that were not impacted, the older homes, the antebellum mansion down. It's sitting on high ground. There's undulations in the land that they knew about when they built these homes.
Right.
And so, it's just going to continue to be an issue of Florida. Like you said, I love Florida. Price of paradise. I'm staying. I've heard people say though they're leaving.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be a long-term problem though. We're not going to see people turning away from Florida because of a hurricane.
Janelle, how do you feel about that?
So in some ways this is being addressed. I think you could make the argument that it's not being addressed aggressively or quickly enough. But you're looking at things like there's an ongoing attempt right now as we speak in Tallahassee to increase the amount of money available for people to get grants and reimbursements and such to raise their homes.
The Elevate Florida program.
Exactly. I might say Florida Homes, I think, is
Elevate Florida is offering up to 75% to help you cover the cost of elevating your home to today's standards.
Yes, and there's a separate effort going on in the legislature right now to kind of include raising homes in a program that already existed as well. So you are seeing efforts to not just look at, you can't put the bathwater back in the bath, right? Like, I feel like I got that saying wrong, but whatever. So you know, how do we take what we already have? You can't stop climate change from happening, what's already happened, but you can say, let's build smarter, let's be resilient, and things like hardening and raising homes, you know, moving forward with new building codes, making sure that we're building in appropriate places. That's really what Florida can do right now, and I think you're seeing that being embraced on both sides of the aisle, which is a lovely thing to see
I
in
wonder what the typical
2025.
cost is to elevate a home, though, Jacob.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's over $7,500, so
It's quite,
that's
it's
probably
quite
a drop in the bucket.
It's quite expensive.
Quite expensive,
Yes.
especially now at a time when everyone is having to do this.
Right.
That's affected by the 50 rule by FEMA.
And I think it, once again, is something that disproportionately will affect lower income people, renters who, can't rely on a landlord to do the right thing, or maybe their landlord just sells off the property and demolishes it or whatever. People living in mobile homes. I mean, that's something I think about a lot.
Roberto, what were
In
you going to say?
coastal communities where tourism represents perhaps 75% of the economy, the local economy, and a lot of those homes are either beach rentals or not primary residence, it's easier to say, well, this does not affect somebody that perhaps doesn't have a yacht or have a house in the beach. However, there's a lot of people that buy groceries and work in the local economy, whether it's maintenance, repair, or they actually provide like a blue-collar workforce. I think it's not ideal for us to say, perhaps this is something that we ought to look at. However, the more resources that we delve into prevention, and the idea that if we can learn from all this onslaught of people, the same way that you guys love Florida, there's like about another 1 million people that are coming within the next 10 years. And particularly 25,000 per year for the next 10 years in the Hillsborough County. So we might end up between 4.5, almost 5 million people living in this Bay Area. So how are we going to address that, and how are we going to provide a successful, resilient infrastructure without the appropriate funding mechanisms, which is, perhaps, taxes, property taxes, or sales tax.
And planners and political leaders are saying we need data to build and base these decisions on. And so this study says we're providing data, the climate study, the coastal risk finder, where you can add information and find out what the results would be in your neighborhood. But when you take a closer look at it, when you can adjust the outcome based on whether or not political leaders have imposed or implemented green energy, moving away from fossil fuels. So the question is, if they have storm, wind power and solar power, that will benefit the areas, correct? So the question is this truly a resource, or is this a political tool that would be used?
Yeah, I don't see how solar is going to stop the water from flowing in, or green. I mean, I bought a hybrid recently. Whoop, newsflash, Republican bought a hybrid, but it's great.
With the greenhouse effects, experts say that it does affect the temperature and all these different things in the climate.
As pointed out, I don't think that's a long-term fix, though.
Well, let me just clarify that a little bit here, because while I'm saying that you can't really undo what's already happened, you can take steps to keep it from getting worse. So while I'm saying that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are working aggressively on mitigation and resiliency strategies now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't still be effort to make sure that moving forward we're not exacerbating problems that already exist.
If we can make our houses energy efficient where they have solar panels on top of it, when there's a major storm that comes, I mean, they can get back online within 24 hours instead of having to purchase a generator and then having to live in heat for the next 7 to 14 days.